I felt sorry for the people attacking me. Because, I mean, I'm like an insane killer ape. There will be major cities quarantined in a giant biological warfare drill. We're being murdered. Most of you are going to be dead soon. They're going to kill you and your family. And most of us are already dead. We'll all be getting cancer soon. We'll all be sterile soon. It's over. You're dead already. You don't like giving your little boys transgender drugs? How about we just kill you, everybody? Like, we try to just let you die quietly. But since you didn't, you've chosen the path of pain. But the people doing this that serve the fallen one, Satan, who's very real and wants to destroy you and your family forever. I felt sorry for the people attacking me. Because, I mean, I'm like an insane killer ape. Because, I mean, I'm like an insane killer ape. Like an insane killer ape. You're gonna burn it out. 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 I'm just saying, you kill me, I kill you. Because Judgment Day is here. I need sleepy time right now. That nice place I go to when I'm asleep.
Welcome once again to another exciting episode of Recording in Progress, where we're watching the death of the entertainment industry in real time. How does it feel, Jim?
Feels great.
Yeah, so we got an exciting lot of reviews for you today, because basically we together saw a whole bunch of things. Mostly it's going to be talking through a lot of things that Jim saw or I saw, and we're going to kind of pepper through it here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history that is the movie Trolls World Tour. So Jim, since you saw 15 minutes of this, tell everybody about the history that has been achieved by Trolls World Tour.
So this is the first movie that was released, a major motion picture by a major studio, released on the day that it was planned to be released, but on streaming instead of an actual movie theater. And that's all because of our good friend, Delicious Negro Modelo. It was also our sponsor of our show tonight, by the way.
So I know you have a special deal with our sponsor that you didn't have to pay the $20 fee to watch this movie.
Yeah, something like that, right?
So
yeah.
How would you feel if you had to pay $20 to watch this movie?
I would have felt upset. I would have felt ripped off. But I don't know. No, I probably wouldn't have felt ripped off. I would have felt ripped off, but I would not have been ripped off. Because I should have known this was going to be terrible. I mean, everything about it looks terrible. Except for, well, I will say that DreamWorks Animation, they do a fantastic job animating stuff, and everything looks very beautiful. Even when they're polishing a turd, it's a very polished turd indeed. But yeah, so this is the first. This is going to go down in the history books as something new, and I'm wondering how well the box office is going to do, because if the box office does well for this, this is going to be probably the new normal. If
it's not going to be reported. It's not going to be reported.
I believe they've already reported international.
Well, I mean, that would be if it's in international movie theater. Streaming services don't report how much they actually make, how many people actually watch.
I can't imagine this doing well.
Yeah, it's completely unverifiable. So, Jim, would you recommend anybody watch the first 15 minutes of this movie?
Okay, so if you like the first Troll movie, you're probably going to have a great time, and you're probably going to absolutely enjoy this. However, for the people in my audience who are over the age of 8 or have an IQ higher than their shoe size, you're going to not appreciate this movie in any way, shape, or form, except for maybe some of the cover songs that they do. You might appreciate like a good couple of tunes. I mean, at the very beginning of the movie, they actually do One More Time by Daft Punk. And it doesn't sound like a cover. It just sounds like the song. But then it goes right into Trolls Just Want to Have Fun in the tune of Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
And it's like, oh no, they're
Yeah.
doing this.
That's
Why did they do that?
I wish that was the worst part. The jokes were just kind of quasi crass, basic, obvious, annoying level things. In fact, one of the jokes, the joke that made me go, "That's it, I'm done," was when they were like telling them like, "There's other trolls that don't listen to pop like us. There's other trolls that listen to different types of music, and they have never even heard of Hammer Time." And they were all acting shocked looked on their faces while they started doing the Running Man, while Stop Hammer Time is playing, and then it goes stop, and no one says Hammer Time, so they all just sit there floating midair. And I was like, "That's it. I'm done. I can't handle this. I can't do this." I wish history was made with the movie that was what's the word? Yeah, good. That's the word I was looking for.
Well, there's going to be some ones that are going to be coming in. I know Artemis Fowl is going to Disney Plus because they've already butchered it, and they've had to delay it for literally a year and a half at this point now. They're going, fuck it, we're just going to plant that bad boy on streaming. So that might be the better sample. We'll see.
Yeah, but basically, if you're too stupid to understand Infinity War and just wanted to see Infinity War for 5-year-olds, here you go. This is it.
All right.
It's this basic plot.
So we're going to move into Seven Psychopaths. Seven Psychopaths was a fun movie and a fun time. You got Christopher Walken, you got Woody Harrelson, you got Colin Farrell. You got a whole lot of great actors in here, and the movie is kind of meta in how it's structured, its story, and its plot, because it's about a screenwriter who's a psychopath. Though we're going to put an asterisk on there. It's, the line between psychopath and sociopath is kind of blurry to non-professionals. So there are a lot of things here that they're portraying as psychopaths that aren't psychopaths. So Colin Farrell's character and trying to write a movie about 7 psychopaths. But he doesn't really have his heart in it because he doesn't want to write a movie about something violent and bloody and all that. But that's what they're paying him for. Mm-hmm. His best friend, played by Sam Rockwell, is also a psychopath. Now, in his case, he is a more textbook of psychopath because he's a serial killer murdering high-level mob members. But he's murdering those high-level mob members because he's banging the mob boss's girlfriend. So he's killing all the people around the guy who's also banging the girlfriend as sort of a giant FU to him. And he started a business where a racket, let's call it a racket, where he's kidnapping dogs to later give them back to their owners. But all of that was a ruse to set up for kidnapping the mob boss's beloved dog, because that's what he cares about more than anything else in this world. So Christopher Walken is the old-timey guy who is also a psychopath. I don't want to go into too much because that would actually spoil his character and some good moments in the movie. So the movie has a couple little plot lines going through. It's everybody running away from Woody Harrelson's character, Sam Rockwell's character going on his ultimate trajectory towards his untimely death, and Colin Farrell's character running away from writing his movie plot. Christopher Walken dies, but there's an interesting character moment that's not a spoiler the way I'm going to explain it to you that kind of wraps up the whole movie for Colin Farrell. So as he's coming up with these psychopaths for the movie within the movie, Comes up with one that's a Viet Cong officer who's going to get a hooker and go and blow up a big reunion of Americans shortly after the Vietnam War in the early 80s. But he wants to write that character, but not have the ending be so violent, and bloody, and disgusting. And so Christopher Walken comes up with a way that's kind of heartfelt and interesting in a dream sequence sort of way. And this movie features within the movie features two dream sequences. And the movie features a peyote-induced hallucination for all three of the main characters, which starts them on their journey towards their final end. So this is a very good movie. It's very fun. It's not as violent as you would expect, but it is violent.
The poster kind of makes it look like a little bit of a Guy Ritchie movie. Is that kind of in the same vein, or?
I mean, you could do this as a Guy Ritchie movie, but the director kind of has a different sort of tempo and tone to the movie.
Okay.
But yes, this is very similar to a Guy Ritchie movie. Very similar kinds of characters.
Yeah.
So, going on the list of things that Jim watched and I didn't, there's the movie Veronica. I couldn't even try to watch it because it just looked so terrible from space. I was just like, no. So Glenn Danzig, from such bands that you might have heard of as Danzig,
and Misfits, and Sam Hayen.
Yeah,
which I'm probably a bigger Misfits fan. At least Misfits with Danzig in it. Once they got rid of Danzig, I think it's just not worth it. Sorry, Dapperton.
Yeah.
After that, I just don't care. Sam Hayen was pretty good, but Danzig, first couple albums are really good.
Right.
And then some hit or miss albums after that with some good tracks in between. One of which made it to the Hangover soundtrack, 13, which is fucking, I love that song. But anyways, so he decided to try his hand in making film, because I guess he's been doing, you probably know more about this than I do. He's been doing...
You skipped the key point. He made a comic book series that's a combination of violence and erotica.
Right.
Thus the title Veronica. And so he's
violent, VEVI.
I mean that's the premise behind it. And so now that he has done this comic book thing that's like a weird indie comic, he decided, you know what, I'm just gonna make this comic ethos into a movie, and Jim watched it.
Yeah.
I don't know why he watched it, but he watched it.
Well, we were watching terrible movies on my server, which, by the way, we're going to do tomorrow. If you join lolbirds.discord.com, you can join us for tomorrow at 3 p.m. We're going to watch another series of bad movies and pick what we decide to be the best of the worst, because why not? we're only stealing the stick because we're bored being and on the verge of getting cabin fever. So anything to keep our sanity while watching Veronica, which I don't know if that's a good combination. But anyways,
normally Jim likes to do a big live stream on that server with the game Desert Bus, but I guess you decided that riding through the desert on a bus with no name in our current climate would not have been productive.
Yeah, well, I'm doing that next week. We're gonna push that forward another week because I think this is much more important. But anyways. So Veronica, that was one of the movies we watched along with Twisted Pair and Cats 2019. And then we watched this, and this was the final ending. So this kept getting billed as like, this is the new Room. Like if you like the Room, you're going to love Veronica.
I've never heard anybody say this.
I have. And it's a big nope from me. Big nope from me. I think so. The movie is about, I guess, this Verotic character who introduces 3 stories to us, kind of like,
it's an anthology movie. Yeah, it's an anthology like Creep Show.
We're not. Yeah, is it Creep Show? I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it's Creep Show. That's the one you're thinking of.
No, Tales from the Crypt. That's what I'm thinking.
Creep Show. You're thinking about both. Both. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's a anthology comic series focused on horror, or in this case, gore.
Right, but it's introduced by a kind of like a storyteller. So I guess Tales from the Crypt would be better, or what's her name, Elvira, something like that, right? Yeah. So she kind of introduces these 3 stories, but not really. I mean, her screen time is probably 2 minutes at most, and that's being very generous. And her horns look like foreskins. But very bad art, costume design, I guess, or makeup. So the first story is about this woman who has eyeballs for nipples, and she's getting hot and heavy with a guy, and he insists on taking her shirt off, and she doesn't want to, and she finally manages to pull it up, and he sees her eyeball nipples, freaks out and leaves, and she starts crying.
I mean, that's an extremely specific fetish, eyeball nipple.
And her eyeballs start crying because of it on her nipples. And one of the teardrops lands on an albino spider that's horribly rendered, and then turns into a person / spider, a person with 4 arms or 6 arms and 2 legs, and says that he's going to. Anytime she falls asleep, she's going to do her bidding while she's asleep. And he doesn't do her bidding exactly. He just goes and kills all of her friends by snapping their neck.
I mean, isn't that what she wanted, though? Because, I mean, it's that kind of a movie.
Well, she didn't really want that because it's killing her friends instead of the people who are genuinely bad people. It's not like he was killing the guy who was mean to her about her eyeball nipples.
Right, but I'm just saying, though, based on this kind of movie, aren't all of her friends probably bad to her, too?
No, they seem to be understanding and wanting to be helpful.
Hmm.
So there's no reason for them to die. He didn't go out and try to kill the people who tried to rape her in the porn theater. Instead, it just tried to kill another random hooker for some reason. Anyways, and this is supposedly taking place in France, and it's funny in terms of like there's little things that you notice, like why is the light showing cafe facing inside of the cafe rather than outside to let people know outside that there's a cafe inside. I mean, if you're in the cafe, you already know you're in a cafe, right? Everybody's French accent is terrible. There's a scene where she goes to a porn movie theater and she doesn't know why everybody just does nothing but have sex in the porn. And then if you look at and if you look at the projection room, it's not like an actual film projector. It's like they took a room fan, and put it in front of a light so it looks like it's flickering light. But you can actually see the fan. It like just little things like that in the movie that make it kind of fun. And I enjoyed that first third of it. The second story is about a serial killer woman who has a disfigured face, who goes around and murders people or murders cute girls for their faces so that she can wear them at a strip club. And a police investigator detective starts trying to figure out who's doing all the murders. And this is where it just kind of falls apart and gets boring. It doesn't make any sense. It becomes just completely nonsensical and just kind of a trudge to get through. Mostly because like the whole plot doesn't make any sense at all. Like why would you cut off women's faces and put it on your own face to hide your disfigurement, but then go strip with a mask on? Why not just have your disfigured face with a mask?
Again, wearing a mask when you're stripping, that's a very niche fetish.
Right. And like anytime he would kill a girl, he would like, I'm gonna cut your face. Or she killed a girl, she would say like, I'm gonna take your face, and they'd go, no, not my face. Not my face, and just stand there and let her slash them instead of trying to run away or defend themselves. And it just gets ridiculous. And the third part of the third quote unquote story is about this real person who existed in Hungary. I forget her name exactly, but she was known for rounding up like very young women in the area who were virgins. Lady Bathroy. Rounding up young virgins in her area, killing them and bathing in their blood, hoping that it'll give her infinite or eternal youth. But all it was just her getting the girls, killing them, and then bathing in their blood while the camera pans in and out, while all the actors are just standing around, just not knowing when they're gonna say cut. And just it's very awkward. And that's pretty much it. One tries to escape and they cut her head off. And that's it. and that third part becomes like a trudge. That one part of the movie, that 1/3 of the movie was longer. It felt longer than both of the movies we had watched before it.
That's the closest to an actual story.
The last one was not a story at all.
Well, none of them were.
Well, the first one was a story. It had a whole thing where the bad guy ended up getting killed. She actually had a plan to kill the spider, and she achieved that goal. A threat was presented. She neutralized the threat at the cost of her own life. Okay, that's a story. The second part was just a bunch of things happening that allegedly is a story. The third part was just someone bathing and killing someone and then bathing in their blood while the camera just pans in and out, 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 in and out for uncomfortable lengths of time.
So let's talk about that for a moment. So does Glenn Danzig have the basics of how to direct a movie?
No.
Down. I mean, did he do a worse job of the actual camera work than Fred Durst as a director?
Yes.
Now, admittedly, in Fred Durst's case, he had directed a couple of things before then, but they weren't. Well, no, excuse me. He had written a couple of things. He hadn't directed anything. So
he did direct one movie.
Yeah,
it was some basketball movie, and he also directed a bunch of music videos. So he understood how like camera stuff works, how to make things look good. He knows when to cut.
Yeah, Glenn Danzig, however, didn't.
No, there's lots of times where we're just sitting around going, "All right, when is this? Just should ended. This should have ended." And then it will fade out. Like instead of cutting, a lot of times they just fade out. And it's just like, why did that even fade out? None of this stuff makes sense. It's just terrible. Not good. It's not so bad that it's good. I think the first act of it, the first story of it, is so bad it's good. I recommend watching the first third of it. The rest of it, just don't even bother unless you like looking at cute girls dancing naked. But it's awkward because they're dancing and you can tell like they're waiting for him to go like, all right, when are you gonna cut? And he's like, no, we're not cutting. We're still going. Just keep dancing.
So that's Veronica. That's a thing that Jim watched.
That's a thing that happened. Someone made this.
Somebody made this. So I watched a good movie on Netflix called Bloodfather. So imagine, if you will, Mel Gibson is a busted out old biker who's, struggling to make ends meet, struggling to deal with the fact that he's had some sobriety issues. He's living in a trailer out in the middle of the California desert. Can you imagine that, Jim?
Mm.
Now imagine this man has a daughter, and her daddy wasn't around, so she became kind of a bad girl, hooked up with some Mexican mobsters, killed one of them, and ended up on the run from the Mexican mafia. So this is a story about, redemption for a father who abandoned his daughter, redemption for the daughter, chased by various criminals, a slight little, violent shoot 'em up. It's an interesting movie. There's shows strengths for both the daughter and the father character, but it's part of the trend of, well, we want to glorify the female character, and even though the male character is clearly the stronger character, the better actor, better written, he's just going to end up dying after showing, oh, the kid's better than me, so I'm just going to die now. Admittedly, thought the movie was going to do a swerve ending where he actually survived, but no. And the movie ends with her in AA recounting the story of her father saving her life and her starting her quest into sobriety. It's really fascinating, though, because the biker gang's leader officially stopped leading the biker gang, but unofficially he's still in charge, and he's running a collectibles business out of a barn out in the middle of the California desert. And Mel Gibson's character, took a fall for him and kept his mouth shut. And didn't reciprocate the rewards that he was expecting for that, so he ended up getting paid out. So that's Bloodfather. Now, what's interesting is this was actually the first movie with the actress who played the central female protagonist in The Boys. So this was like her movie she did before that. So next one up is Tales from the Loop, which is also an anthology series. Now, for those of you who don't know, there was some really interesting artwork which takes sci-fi, pieces of stuff and plops it into the middle of 1970s, 1980s, and early 90s nostalgia imagery. So they've made a role-playing game for that. There's been a whole bunch of people who've done similar art, and they decided to make a sci-fi anthology series of it. So it's all about the titular loop, which is a research facility, and it's about various sci-fi scenarios where the science involved it goes horribly, horribly wrong. Lots of good acting, but everything is underwritten in it. And what I really liked, though, is this is actually better than most streaming series in that it's not a single continuous story loop that should have been just a 2 to 3 hour movie, but instead they cut into like a 12-hour TV series. This is, an anthology series that deserved to be an anthology series, but they didn't write the individual parts effectively. This would have been really good if it was like Eureka. Did you ever watch Eureka, Jim?
No.
So Eureka was about a super science town out in the middle of nowhere in Oregon where...
Oh, I think I think my parents watched it, and I don't remember liking it, but I was like really young, so I don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this would be kind of like Eureka. They needed to have more of a tone like that, but also the anthology, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits tone as well. And if they kind of blended those two together, this would have worked out a whole lot better. And it's a solid bit of sci-fi. I enjoyed it, but if you're not a fan of old school sci-fi, it's not going to be a really good time for you. And they do a good job of bringing the visuals out. But like this robot here, for example, I mean, that looks good. That's very aesthetic to what it is, but it's not enough to justify making an effort to go out and get Amazon Prime to watch this. So I'm going to tell you about a story on sci-fi in a TV series called Vagrant Queen. I've watched 3 comics, but before I can tell 3 episodes of it, so before I can tell you about it, I'm going to tell you about the comic book. So if I was going to tell you about the comic book this show is based off of, what would be the number one thing I would tell you?
I don't know.
Jim?
I don't know. I don't
No.
really come.
Well, no. This is something like, would you think it'd be something about the story?
Yeah, why not?
Not the number one thing to talk to about. Would it be about the art?
No.
No. The creator is the first and most prominent trans comic book creator.
Oh no.
And is popularly accused of by many people on the interwebs of being a trans trender. And I think that's unfair. I think that's an unfair accusation for Mags Visaggio. Now, Mags has written like dozens of comic books and has gotten multiple awards. Now, do you think she's sold a lot of comic books?
Probably not.
What's the most people you ever had watch a video?
250,000.
Quarter of a million.
That's my highest view count on one of my videos.
More people have watched that video you made than read the comic book series this is based off of.
Well, if every view was one individual person, like I'm sure over the 10 years that video has been uploaded, I've probably watched it maybe a good 30 times.
So Jim,
at least registered as 30 views while I was like in the comment section or whatever. Yeah.
So Jim, let's take that down to 2,500. Let's say there was 2,500 individual views of that one video. Do you think that more people watched that video in that limited framework or read this comic book?
I'm guessing that my video is more popular than this comic.
In that framework, 3 times more popular.
Oh, jeez. But it was enough to make a movie out of.
Well, to make a sci-fi series out of it.
Series, sorry.
And Do you think it made it all the way to its 8-issue run?
Probably not.
Canceled on issue 7. They did, however, put issue 8 in the trade paperback for the anthology series. So, why did they make this into a TV show?
For sci-fi to say we're woke.
Yes. Now, here's something that's really fascinating about this show. Mags, the creative writer, she wrote.
Hey,
She's writing on all
hold
the
on.
episodes.
I was not bumping up my view count. I was just engaging in my comment section with people who were trying to debate me, and if it registers as a view, it's not my problem. That's not what I was there for. I was there to argue with retards. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So Mags actually has a writing credit on the 3 episodes I have watched. So she not only wrote the comic book, she wrote it. And all of the more recent people who are in the woke, give them dozens of comic books that won't sell crowd that are all trying to bust into Hollywood, all of those comic book friends are in this project with her. So that's a fascinating little bit of, this is interesting. So this, I'm not going to blame the writing. The writing in this show is bad. The writing in the show is poorly thought out, but that's not the problem for the show. So the show has 2 sorts of tones it's trying to go for. Gritty, grungy sci-fi that's kind of popular with things like The Expanse, and also hipster, ironic, weren't old 70s and 80s and early 90s sci-fi things kind of kitschy and amusing. It's trying to do both of those things at the same time. That don't fit together. So that's a big problem here. Next, you go to the direction. And the director is a producer, and she's also helped co-write in a couple of the episodes. So let's say you were doing a show that was trying to be a takeoff on the 70s and 80s and 90s kind of cheesy, bad sci-fi stuff. So if you were directing an actor in that, would you want the actor to be kind of goofy about how they present it, or do you want them to be serious?
If you're trying to go for cheese, then you want them to be goofy.
No. Old Doctor Who, they weren't goofy.
Oh, okay.
Old Star Trek, they weren't goofy. They were hammy, they were campy, but they weren't goofy. They took every bit of it seriously. Like Kill Bill. Kill Bill's a great example. Kill Bill was
that was hammy.
all camp. It was all hammy, all campy. That is what you needed to do. So I think the lines that are being murdered in the English language into being in this show could be delivered effectively if there was competent direction. Tiger King, Monolithic Ethos, that's going to be our showstopper, I believe.
Yeah.
Because it's really the best bit of it. So
we have a lot to say about it.
We do. So the titular Vagrant Queen is that young woman of color in the front. She was a space princess, and at the age of 10, she was overthrown, and she became basically a space vagrant and drifter and scavenger. So what do you think about this character? Do you think that she wants to regain her throne? Save her people?
I don't know.
No, she just wants to be a bum.
Oh. Whoa, huh?
Yeah, she just wants to be a bum. She's happy with her life as a bum.
Okay.
So the guy in the top left there, does he look cool and confident?
Yeah.
Well, he's not. He's a goofy beta male who fails at everything and always gets in danger from Canada and makes obscure Canadian references.
Oh.
And the little space satyr there on the right, that's their mechanic/pilot that the main character wants to have a lesbian relationship with.
And let me guess, she's quirky, and
yes.
she's what's the word I'm looking for? She's the humor piece. What was it?
Well, I mean, everybody thinks they're funny in the show, and none of them are.
Oh, okay.
And so I've watched all 3 of the first episodes. And the pilot was bad, but it was bad in the way that most pilots are bad. Of like, here, we're going to exposition dump everything into it. Just dump it all in. The second episode was a bridge between the first episode and the second episode, the first and third episode, but its big set piece was karaoke to the death. That was their big action set piece. So I do not recommend this. This is trash, but it's fascinating for me to watch it from the perspective of this is the person who made the comic writing it, and she's writing the show worse than she wrote the comic. And the direction and production doesn't know what they're doing. But they're being woke, and this actress who I'm sure Sci-Fi's parent company has on contract or something saying, hey, this comic book character here looks kind of like you. Let's make a show around you. That's probably as much thought as they put into it. All right. So Clone Wars is going through its final season. I reviewed an arc where they cleaned up some of the lingering last bits of stuff for the troopers, who were some of the central audience viewpoint characters. But the Clone Wars animated series also introduced us to a young Jedi called Ahsoka Tano, who was the Padawan to one Anakin Skywalker, a.k.a. Darth Vader, that you know and love. So at the end of the series, before the end of the series, she was accused of betraying the Jedi and the Republic. She defended herself at her trial, and she told the Jedi to go F themselves, and she wandered off. Now later, she's a Force-using hero who's helping people in the Rebels TV series, and this 3-episode arc is covering, well, how that happened. So she crashes into 1313, and if you know your deep Star Wars lore, 1313 is basically the dark, dirty, dank underworld of Coruscant, and she discovers that all the stuff about the Jedi aren't perceived as positives because there's so much suffering and horrible stuff going on in a galaxy far, far away. And so she's being introduced to these terrible things by some characters that are kind of compelling, kind of interesting, but not really. They're kind of undercooked. One of them's a mechanic / pilot who's supposed to be streetwise and street savvy, but she's also extremely naive. And her sister, who's a gambler and a degenerate criminal making criminal deals, but she makes them with literally all the worst kind of people. You're making a deal with the such and such syndicate. Don't you know that they cut the hands off of all the people that they make successful deals with? Well, it'll be fine. But it's a compelling story because you get to see Ahsoka Tano as a character again, and you get to see her growing into that next step of her character arc. So you see this as kind of like a little bit of it's kind of nice. And in the preview for the final episode of this season, which is the final season, she's going to rejoin the Jedi for the penultimate battle of the war. So it was good. It was fun. If you're into this series and invested in it and invested in these characters, it's a good reason for you to go watch Disney Plus. All right, now we're back into the part where both Jim and I are locked in with things we have both seen.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a movie that's so great that later Jim and I are probably going to do a retrospective of Albert Brooks movies. It's called Defending Your Life. So Jim, was this what you were expecting?
So I have seen it before, but it's been a
No.
really long.
I was making a joke.
Oh.
So
I don't even know what this is.
So for those of you who haven't seen it, Defending Your Life is a movie about Albert Brooks, who's playing basically himself as a self-effacing guy in California who has a horrible car accident.
From L.A.
From L.A. Not just California, L.A. He has a terrible accident in his brand new Beamer, and he dies, and he goes to where you go when you die, which isn't what you expected because there's no religion, there's no angels, there's no heaven, there's no hell. There's just the bureaucracy of the universe processing you.
Yeah, just a bunch of courthouses.
Yep.
And awesome restaurants.
Yes.
And terrible comedy clubs.
Yes. So one of the many things that make this movie so great is this is a perfect example of world building.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot of world building in it, but what's here is deep. It's like saying, okay, you're dead, and you're supposed to evolve into smarter, more self-aware beings at the deeper and more profound level of the universe. Mm-hmm. But we're kind of stupid. it repeats the 3% of your brain thing. But we'll throw that away.
Yeah, that's kind of like pop science meme. It's not
Yeah.
actual science, or folk science rather, not pop
Yeah.
science. Yeah,
Like, now that we have computers, we should even know it's stupider now,
yeah,
because that's not how processing strength works. That's literally the opposite of how it works.
yeah.
So, you think, okay, well, you're dead, but you're in a transitive period. What do you do to make people more comfortable? Well, what if they could just eat everything they want, as much as they want, and it's the best food they've ever eaten, and there's no consequences for it? That sounds pretty great.
Yeah.
And what if it's like, a retirement community in like Arizona or Nevada where there's all sorts of golf and entertainment and stuff, so you could just goof around?
Well, when you're not in your trial.
Well, when you're not in your trial,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, so their afterlife system is kind of Buddhist a little bit in their thinking, where it's all about, fear, and how fear holds you back from doing things. But also, this, unlike a more traditional Buddhist mindset, it's basically negative attachment is bad, but positive attachment is good. So you either are on trial for not being positively attached to other human beings, having empathy, compassion, making realistic connections, or you're being punished for
Fear.
being too afraid to establish meaningful connections.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental thing. All of humans are judged on it. As objective spooks for moral standards go, that's not a bad way to go.
Yeah.
It's very easy to write stories based around that ethos.
I think what he was saying was, like, on Earth, people range anywhere from 3 to 5% of their brains is what they use.
Yeah.
And if you have more than 3 to 5%, you don't want to live on Earth
No,
anyway.
if you have more than 5%, there are better places for you.
Yeah.
Earth isn't really very good.
Yeah. So the point is to push you on into another area so that you can grow further until you can get to 50, maybe even 100% of your brain. 50%.
And then become a bureaucrat of the universe.
Right. Which I would not mind. Living in a world where you could just eat forever and not gain weight. And then eating things that taste like absolute garbage to normies. I'm fine with this.
Yeah. It's kind of like hipster music, but with food.
Yeah.
So, something else that was kind of interesting to me watching this now is how very much like the way corporate America wants every employee to be, all the different employees who are part of the bureaucracy were, all the very superficial friendliness. That's kind of something that was kind of interesting to me, that now it kind of conflicts with the whole theme about establishing meaningful attachments and relationships. So what did you think on rewatching this gem of a movie that most people probably haven't watched?
I like how we just completely overlooked Meryl Streep and role in all this, where, I mean, she's kind of the central point in the movie for him kind of overcoming fear. It's especially towards the end. So yeah, I don't remember what the process was, but I remember looking up like some terrible movie that someone was in and then going like, oh, who was the cast in this? And then it was like, oh, I don't know who this lady is. All these names look familiar, but I don't know this lady.
She's Rip Torn's wife.
Yeah, she's Rip Torn's wife. And then I looked up Rip Torn and I saw a picture of him and Albert Brooks, and I was like, and he was wearing that tuwa, and I was like, oh, he was in that movie? And then I was like, I have to watch this again. If he's in that movie, I have to watch it again.
And as soon as Jim posted that, and I said, you know what? I love this movie.
Yeah.
I definitely want to watch it again.
Yeah, I forgot how great this movie was. This movie is great.
Man.
So yeah, so I think, like, because they only use like 3% of their brains, I think he said that, because you only use 3% of your brain, most of your time is dealing with fear. So we're going to be looking at most of the times that you were dealing with fear. That's going to be that's what they're going to try to go after you as. So I think that's kind of a useful thing. It's not saying like fear is like the most terrible thing or whatever.
Well, no,
it's rather that if you're ready, you should be at that point where you're overcoming fear much more easily than the rest of people. And then that's how you can move on to another world that's better for people with big brains, unlike you small brains.
and that's why, he had to love Meryl Streep, and he literally would be willing to be erased from the universe to be with her. And that was good enough to, on the curve, saying, yeah, you get to move on.
Yeah.
And this is a great movie. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yep.
So we're
Glad
gonna
I
move
went
on
back. Glad I went back and watched that again.
Yeah. So I'm actually gonna. I forgot when I was saying, oh, now we're on the stuff that Jim and I both watched. This next one, actually, I only watched, but it's okay.
I was supposed to watch it, and I completely forgot that we were supposed to watch this, to be honest. I wanted to see this because I love Galaxy Quest.
So this is a movie about the making of Galaxy Quest. And what's fascinating is this is a great documentary explaining how you get lightning in a bottle. So there are a lot of inside baseball productions that they talk about, saying one of the easiest ways to not have the studio meddle with your movie is to have another movie distracting their attention. So Galaxy Quest was going through production at the same exact time as Gladiator. So Gladiator was sucking up a huge ton of money. The studio was entirely focused on on Gladiator. So Galaxy Quest was basically able to do what they wanted. But the studio believed in this vision. They believed in this movie. So they got a really amazing cast. A cast that is, you look at this like saying, how did this movie get all of these people together here in this movie? How is that possible? And the casting director did an amazing job. They almost had Harold Ramis direct the movie, but because Harold Ramis dropped out, there was another director came in and he said, no, this is going to be a funny movie, but we're not filming it as a comedy. We're filming it as a drama that has comedic elements in it. Because the emotional heartbeat of the movie is a dramatic scene. And Tim Allen recounts doing that dramatic moment in the movie where he admits to the leader of the Thermians that, no, that I'm just an actor. This is all fake, all pretend. That like he emotionally broke down. And in the process, he gained the respect of Alan Rickman as an actor for him finally breaking through and not just being a cheesy, goofy TV comedy actor. And Steven Spielberg, that was the one day he showed up on set. And he like leaned over the director going, man, Tim's really good in this. And like he went back and like, congratulated Tim. And Tim, like he was with Steven Spielberg and like going, hey guys, you know who this is? This is the guy who directed 1941. And then Steven said to say, no, that was George who did that.
Yikes.
So the movie came together because the studio was paying attention to another movie that was trouble. The marketing department is the only reason this movie wasn't a bigger success, but this movie made a profit and has now become a beloved cult classic. In addition to the people who were involved in the making of the movie, they interviewed several cast members from Star Trek The Next Generation who are all like, yeah, this is a great movie. We all loved this movie. This was great. We loved it. And for those of you who don't know the movie, Galaxy Quest, you should do something nice for yourself and watch it. It's a great movie. It's all about how the fans go from being laughed at a punchline of jokes to being heroes of the story. It's all about how busted out and broken down actors go through a heroic journey and become heroes of a story. Their beautiful, wonderful TV show is reborn at the end. And Sigourney Weaver actually recounted something very fascinating. Her character in the movie was the sex kitten character, because 60s and 70s TV show, women were there to be sex kittens a little bit. And she said, like, when I'm doing this, I was saying, like, if my life had went down a different path, I could have gotten on one of these kind of TV series, and then I kind of would have been typecast, and this could have been me. So that was her whole perspective of her character. Tony Shalhoub's character was completely and totally a goofball, but that was because there wasn't really anything written for his character, so he did like a whole bunch of comedic stuff. And the Thermians, the actor who was the leader for the Thermians, he just basically made up the entire Thermian thing off the cuff at his tryout. I totally forgot what the word is for that. Where you do your little performance thing. So he completely made up the alien on the spot, and everybody who made the film were like going, this is amazing. And then the other people who played speaking part Thermians each came with a different element of the character, and like everybody collaborated. So this is a really great documentary if you want to see how a lightning in the bottle movie comes together. Like Tim Allen and Alan Rickman were cast to be William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, and that's exactly what happened. Also, they talk about a great scene where Sam Rockwell sees Tony Shalhoub having sex with one of the aliens. He goes, "Oh, that's not right." Well, that was an ad-lib line that Sam Rockwell asked the director, "Hey, can we do another take like this?" And that was what they put in because it was funnier. And yeah, so this is a great documentary, and it's a really great perspective on a wonderful movie. You should definitely do something nice for yourself and watch that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about an active Brenius.
Neil Breen.
Because who am I?
What am I? What happened to us? You betrayed us. You betrayed me.
Now, if we're looking for something that's the next room, it's literally anything Neil Breen is responsible for.
But
it's literally.
But so the room like has a plot. You can follow the plot. There's things that the plot turns that happen that go nowhere.
But there's at least a story.
But there's at least a story. Whereas there is, I think there's a story with Twisted Pair. I just haven't figured it out yet. And I don't think anybody has figured it out yet except for Neil Breen.
So Jim, how would you describe this movie in a way reminiscent of Rich Evans describing Double Down, which started us on our love of Neil Breen?
So Neil Breen stars as fantasy Neil Breen, who is a twin brother who was kidnapped. Wait, you just can't interrupt me like that when I'm explaining a Neil Breen film. He has the best ball sack. He plays fantasy Neil Breen, who is a twin brother of someone who gets kidnapped at a young age.
Both got kidnapped.
Right, they both got kidnapped by aliens who train them in the metaverse to become secret agent, cybernetic superhero hackers, who is after AI with no UI and limitless powers and capabilities. Who one of them fell out. He slacked off. He didn't achieve his goals, so he ended up getting kicked out of the Metaverse Academy and becoming a drug dealer with his a drug addict and alcoholic with his drug addict alcoholic wife, who only uses him for money or uses him for drugs and alcohol. Whereas the other one, which I forget their names, he has like weird names for everybody. Fantasy Neil Breen stalks a woman at a local university. I mean, shopping mall.
Like when we were watching it for the first time, for those of us who were in the Discord the other night, we watched like going, wait, he's stalking her. Wait, he's breaking into her house.
Yeah,
what?
And there was even a part where someone said like she was very beautiful, and like he was like, I will follow her, and that's what, like, for me, like, because I'm watching it a couple seconds before you. He actually said it alongside of him. It was kind of creepy that he predicted that so on the nose and that close. And he was like, I'll follow her. And so he follows her into the house. He breaks into her house and he begins to attack her, and tries to rape her. But
that's what they're into,
right? And it turns out that they were married all along. And that's just like a little fetish of theirs that they like to rape play.
That's a really weird thing to just put into your extremely niche independent movie,
right? And there just happened to be a picture in a picture frame right on the couch for her to hit him with, which was very conveniently placed. He then, I think, goes on a mission to destroy buildings
No,
Well, there are buildings and oil facilities that house the AI.
no. So there's an alien
Right.
who's trying to control people with mind
Cade and
control
Kale.
chemicals.
Cade and Kale. So Cade is the good
Yeah,
one and Kale is the bad one.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
there's an alien who's trying to mind control drug people and also cyber hack people's brains in real time using programmable matter.
Oh yeah. I forgot about all that because there was just too much of it.
There were too many words. There was a lot of word salad going on.
Yeah, it's kind of like when someone sings a song, they know all the words but they don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Cade is kind of like your mainstream Superman-y kind of hero, who's fighting like the big meta evil stuff, whereas Kale, like a street level guy who's going after like corrupt businessmen and lawyers who talk openly about the politicians they bribe and all the people they've had killed,
Right.
just casually while they're being chained up
Right.
in his murder basement. And then he uses Photoshop to copy and paste one guy multiple times into the same scene.
Right.
So
And one of them has a Scotch tape mustache.
Yes, yes. But let's talk a little bit about the visual effects of this movie.
It's basically one explosion .gif.
No.
Explosion .gif.
Remember the perspective one of Cade and Kale walking from the foreground?
Yes. And they kind of like were floating and then fall into the ground and grew bigger.
Yeah. And also there was a freeze frame for a while where Jim had to say, no, it's still playing, guys.
Like everyone was like, yeah, this is like Jim, I think there's stream froze. I'm like, no, that's the movie. Lots of terrible green screen effects.
Lots of free things to paste into a green screen.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of image stock.
Lots of Shutterstock images and videos. But I think the highlight for me was all the times that the U.S. Marine forces were just frozen in time, and he would come up behind them and say, "Stop, follow me, I'll protect you." And he would like hobble along because Neil Breen is like 900 years old, and he walks like he needs to have his depends changed. But don't worry, he'll protect you. Because I know that if I'm ever in a recon mission with a bunch of Navy SEALs who are well trained, and I have 300 confirmed kills, I know that if a hobbly old man says like, "Stop, follow me, I'll protect you,"
But Jim, he has all the medals.
I will stop mid frame. Oh yeah, it's on his cutoff jean jacket. I know that just stop, freeze frame, even if I'm midair, just stop, freeze frame, wait for him to pass me, and then continue on. I know that.
Part of me wants to take all of Neil Breen's movies and try to cut them into pieces and see if I could assemble them into a single coherent movie.
Good luck.
I mean, I'm beginning to wonder if there's enough ideas in all of his movies you could like cut it into one sane movie.
Yeah.
I'm not saying a good movie. I'm saying a sane movie. Also, you notice the hair and beard that Neil as Kale has there? That's digitally added on.
No, that's not. That was a
No, it is. No, that it is. Because remember when he had his hoodie on and the hair was glitching through the hoodie?
No. That was really his hair. It just looked terrible.
No. His hair literally physically glitched through the hoodie.
No.
Yeah, it did.
No. I think that was I think that was a streaming glitch. I'm 100% sure that was his real hair. His mustache was definitely fake, and it would like sheen, and you could actually see the spirit gum on his face underneath it. That was real. It was just shot that terribly. Yeah.
So what do you think about the casting of both of his romantic co-leads?
The wife looked like she changed persons at the very end. It looked like a completely different person. Didn't it?
A little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. This is a really weird movie. He ends up he ends up finding like these Instagram models, because I end up looking these girls up that he gets for his movies, because a lot of them are really cute. And I'm like, where is he getting these girls?
On Instagram?
Yeah, and it turns out they all are like what do they call them? Social influencers on like Instagram and Facebook and stuff. Like basically thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's a good. So he's just going on there and being like, "Hey, I'll pay you X amount of dollars to be in my movie," and they're like, whatever. And then they never talk about it. Like you can go on their Instagram and scroll down back to when these movies were made. There's no mention of them. There's no like behind the scenes footage. Nothing. There's no interviews. There's nothing. There's no tweets or anything saying like, "Hey, I'm going to be in a new movie." Nothing. You can tell that they're and even in the filming, you can tell like these women are embarrassed to be there, but they're like, Neil Breen is fucking moneybags, and he's paying me well.
Well,
So
I don't think he's paying you well. He's probably paying you $100 or $200 a day.
well, he's for them, they're paying him well.
Yeah. But I mean, eThoughts, don't they have like My Fans Only, where they probably get that like monthly off of thirsty people on the internet?
I don't know how much he's paying him, so I'm pretty sure he's paying him enough.
So if you love Neil Breen movies, you should watch this.
Yeah, this is also the one that like makes me the least. It's the least concerning. All of the other movies that he's in, he's always talking and bragging about or glorifying the slaughter of people who he deems undesirables, and it's mostly like bankers, politicians, lobbyists,
the media.
Yeah. Those people always get murdered en masse in all of his movies, or he threatens to murder them en masse. This one is just kind of like a B plot where that happens for like 5 seconds, but it's being done by the antagonist of the movie or one of the antagonists of the movie. So you're just kind of like, all right, maybe he's not being serious about this one. And our lead character doesn't talk about that stuff. He's much more interested in stopping these alien evil people rather than...
You see, I at least like that.
Yeah.
That's appealing to me.
Is he a libertarian? No, he's not. He seems very progressive, like a progressive, because he's always on about corporate, bailouts and bankers and stuff.
I mean, that could be libertarian, though.
It can be, but for someone to like want to go out and murder people because they, they lobby government and stuff, like I don't know. Seems like the only people that libertarians want to boog against is just the government. So
we're going to talk about a little movie called Ender's Game. We're also going to talk about an album called Ender's Game.
No, we already talked about Ender's Game, the album. That was last week.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to talk about Ender's Game, the movie. So we did the album.
No, we didn't.
Oh, we didn't?
No.
Yeah, we were going to talk about it last week. That's right.
No, we talked about the album last week, and then that was like, maybe we should talk about the movie. Here, let me.
We didn't do the show last week.
Do you want to? Let's talk about the album. Let's do the album.
Yeah, let's
first.
talk about the album. So
all right,
the album, of course, Jim is trying to enlighten me more on music and get me enriched with musical knowledge and entertainment, which is kind of great. And I've been trying to enrich him on movies, and this is a trifecta. This is the thing that gets you into a book series, a movie, and music.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of a techno progressive rock kind of album. Is that a fair assessment, Jim?
No, this is much more like experimental.
Well, I mean, it's experimental, but there's some techno influences, some progressive rock influences, and all of that in here.
Some classic too. Movie score. It's probably more in the vein of a movie score than it is any of those. Yeah.
But I think when they made this album, I don't know this for a fact, but I think when they made this album, there's probably some things they threw in here saying like, look, they're not going to let us do the actual soundtrack, so let's just throw in a few experimental things that kind of fit with the stuff we already made.
Wait, are we talking about the same album? I think we're talking about very different albums here, because we talked about Peace Sword. This is Godspeed You, Black Emperor, right?
I think I'm on the wrong script then.
Because I'm just like, wait a minute, no. So yeah, last week we did Peace Sword with Flaming Lips. That was supposed to be the soundtrack for Ender's Game.
Okay, so let's get me back on track with the right album.
Godspeed You Black Emperor was the 90-minute.
Okay. Okay, now I remember.
Okay.
Now I remember. I'm back on track. I crossed the albums together because I was like thinking, wow, an album, a book, and a movie together. I thought that'd be a really good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So let Jim get us back on the script of the actual album we're supposed to be talking
so
about.
This is Godspeed You, Black Emperor. It's Godspeed You, ! Black Emperor. And this is their 2000 album, Lift Your Skinny Fists Up to the Heavens Like Antennae, which is a 90-minute long double album. I think it's on 3 vinyl discs. I don't have this on vinyl, but I definitely want to get it on vinyl. This is much more of an experimental thing that sounds very much more like a score than it does like a rock album, which is
Then and now that I'm back on the correct album, that opening song sequence, I can see that being like an opening musical sequence with like credits in the movie.
Yeah, and it's like that through the entire album. There's not really any, and because there's like not a lot of like melodies going on, a lot of it's just kind of like building up like this crescendo and then just, you know, crashing and then just bringing it down and building that crescendo back up again, you know, rinse and repeat. But it does it in very different, interesting ways every single time, you know, and it always kind of keeps you engaged in that respect. It's very similar to something like what Swans does today, where Swans is a lot more primitive and like kind of it's more kind of like, you know, it's more kind of rhythmic, you know, like you're just bobbing your head, whereas this one you're just kind of like it's more in the feels than in the rhythm.
This would be great background music,
right? This is definitely something that you would listen. I mean, you can listen to it focused, but it's also one of those things where you can shut down and go like, okay, I'm going to do other things. I'm going to clean my apartment. I'm going to, you know, play a video game or.
It's not something that would be consistently good for like exercise music, but like, you know, there's some sequences of it that like could be good for you on a little jog.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this is a little bit experimental, but it's again in the wheelhouse of everything I like, kind of as a piece of music.
Yeah. So if you're into movie scores, and you're but you're looking for maybe something a little bit different. Like I have a friend of mine who tells me like I don't like anything with drums in it. I think that, you know, and because he likes classical music, I think that maybe this might be also for him, even though there is drums in it. It's not usually like the kind of drums you'd expect from a rock band where it's kind of holding the music together. It's just very much like helping build the emotion that's going on in the music rather than giving it any kind of like rhythm or harmony or anything like that. It's an experience. It's much more of an experience than it is, you know, something that you could listen to while you're driving your car and having fun and, you know, doing other things like you do, like a lot of people do with music. This is something that either demands a lot of your attention and you're noticing like little aspects of it, or something that you can put on in the background and just kind of like do regular stuff to, like the soundtrack to your life kind of thing.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
All right. So
and in that respect, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's very good.
So before we move on, do we get more weird? Because this is me going a little bit more weird. Do you want to get even weirder?
Let's
do you want to dial it back?
Let's dial the weird up by at least 25%.
Okay, I think we're gonna dig into some Residents then.
I mean, the Residents are. I've not really had a bad Residents experience. There are some things though that are kind of like, well, this is kind of terrible to hear.
I don't think we've done things like Buster and Glenn or Duck Stab yet. That'll be much more down the line, but we can.
Yeah, but you've exposed me to some of that sort of stuff from the Residents. They're like going, oh, this sounds horrible. I don't want to listen to it.
I think that should be the climax at the end. I mean, we already did Trout Mask Replica. I mean, nothing in the Residents catalog is going to touch something like Trout Mask Replica.
Nothing's going to be that much clearly noise.
Yeah, I know people who can't, who love the Residents and love weird music, who go like, yeah, Captain Beefheart's a little much, my dude. So
now we go to Ender's Game. So Ender's Game was something that I got into backwards. I was of the right age to be into Ender's Game when the book first came out, the young adult fiction series that's young adult military science fiction. So should have been in my wheelhouse, but for some reason I never read the book. So I watched the movie and then I went back and read the book. So this is written by Orson Scott Card, who has some unusual political and religious ideology that filters in all of his work. He's very Mormon. He's very conservative, very Republican-y. And this movie, we're going to talk about the movie and kind of segue a little bit into the book here and there, features Ender Wiggin. Now, the central thing in the book is they're living in a society with population control. Now, they kind of, I'd have to double check with the book because it's been a bit. I'd have to double check, but they kind of changed the why for the population control.
Yeah, I didn't get it when I was listening to. I haven't finished listening to the audiobook. It never got into why they were doing population control. I didn't get to that part yet, but it did talk about, and they just kind of glossed over it very briefly. The whole like having the third child thing. Yeah, and they call them like a third or something like that.
Yeah, which is kind of pejorative.
Yeah,
and in this movie,
they talked about it like for like 5 seconds, and then that was it, and they never actually fully hashed it out. So it left me kind of confused in the movie. Yeah, the only thing that I got from that was, okay, so third-born children are not good in this society.
So basically, in the book, his family had to pay a F ton of money to have a third kid.
Yeah, they said that in the movie too.
Yeah, and that sort of drove him. It's like everybody looked down on him for being the third because having 3 kids was viewed as morally unacceptable in society. So, and his parents paid that money because his dad was a Russian who had been oppressed by the communists. And, he wanted to live out his religious ideology in the land of the free, because this is America, right? I mean, this is America. We're not just, radically cracking down on people of different religions, even though, because they would never in the world accept that. So there was an invasion by some bug alien people, and Earth repelled the invasion. The day was saved, but they decided that they were going to train the next leaders to deal with the return of these aliens whenever they came back. And so, obviously, the best way to do that is with children, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's totally a logical and reasonable thing, because 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds are able to make complex decisions involving risk and evaluating things, and that's clearly an intelligent thing to do, right? Hmm. So Ender gets chosen to go to battle school, which in this movie they kind of make it out to be more like a Harry Potter kind of scenario, where in the movie it's more, no, the society is kind of sci-fi fascist a little bit, and everything is built around the military. And, the Warsaw Pact and NATO and the other countries have all united behind the military threat of aliens from outer space. And the second those aliens get beaten, there's a brief World War III that gets stopped by Ender's brother and sister because they have a weblog. And his sister wrote really convincing things on the internet and made millions upon millions of dollars doing that. As a teenager. That's a thing that happened in the book. Now, Jim, why do you think this is it? Now, I know you always say, well, things aren't in the book. There are things in the books that don't make it to movies. Why was this important in the book, and why does it kind of ruin the whole beat of the movie?
I don't know if it does, because then again, I didn't get to the book.
So in the book, Ender, after successfully defeating the bug aliens, America says, hey, listen, he's with us. So he's going to come back with his army. So there's a whole political struggle about this child soldier army and getting them back to Earth successfully. And they never actually are allowed to get back to Earth. Ender, when there's the big trial of all the people that are around him in the book, which is something the movie doesn't do, because the people on Earth don't consider duping children into attacking space aliens and committing space alien genocide. People on Earth didn't look favorably upon that once that became revealed to the public.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of didn't like that. But that act of space genocide is what spurs on and starts the mass human migration to the stars. So Ender, in the movie, goes into a Harry Potter-like scenario, goes into a Harry Potter-like school, meets magical misfits that become his best friends in determining everything that happens in his future life adventures. What did you get out of the movie?
So I think they were going for something completely different. I think they kind of V for Vendetta it, which like I acknowledge that like V for Vendetta, like if you just look at it in isolation, it's not a bad movie.
What do you mean V for Vendetta?
So V for Vendetta, the original comic versus the movie
was anarchy versus order.
Well, no, it was the original comic was anarchy versus fascism, white supremacist fascism.
No,
that was.
That's not. No, that was not what the comic was about. It was about taking order to an extreme and taking anarchy to an extreme.
Oh yeah. But you're rooting for the bad guy, or not rooting for the bad guy.
They're both bad guys.
They're both bad guys. But you're rooting for a bad guy. You're rooting for the anarchist because the anarchist was, even though he was terrible, he was an awful person. Like he kidnapped and tortured like people. He blew up buildings where people were still inside, like innocent people. But you rooted for him because, given all that, it's still a lot better than the literal Nazis that are running the country.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the kind of outlook on it. Whereas the film, they were like, well, we can't do that because we need to have a clear moral message for people, and we also hate Bush. So let's not make this about anarchy versus fascism. Let's make this quasi left libertarian, small government, but help the people type, but basically still Democrats at the end of the day, kind of like maybe like a California Republican. So this is a California Republicans versus, like George W. Bush, who obviously did 9/11. Like that was what they did. And they threw this extra element in of like a false flag attack on a hospital that was not in the book. That was supposed to be like an obvious, like 9/11 was an inside job, guys. Which when I watched the movie, I was like, this is a good movie and I like it, and I like the V for Vendetta character and it's great. But then when you read the book, you're like, oh, they butchered this story. Like the story was far more interesting and had far more like interesting kind of elements going on. Whereas this one is like totally contrived, and then it gets you to understand like how bullshit it is. Since I haven't read Ender's Game, there might be that for me once I get through it, which I plan on doing. Once I get through it, then maybe I'll have that opinion. But it seems as though they were not really focused on that because they knew that they probably couldn't. They probably knew like mid credit, like whatever, that it was going to get a boycott, and they were like, look, we're not going to be able to like make any more out of this. Let's instead focus our energy on talking about the moral dilemma that comes up at the end of the movie. I think that's what they were trying to do.
That was actually a bigger thing in the book than in the movie.
Oh, it was? Well, because the moral dilemma that comes in is, they're training these kids to be soldiers. The first through this kind of game that they play with, floating in space and shooting each other, which I like that whole sequencing stuff. That stuff was a whole bunch of fun. Then they moved on to like a video game where they're all kind of like playing, role playing as Captain Kirk and whatever. And, they're having a war against the bugs, and they're simulating a game against them. And while this is going on, one of the last time they did it, they were like, we need to push more towards, doing this or whatever. And he's like, I think I got an idea on how to beat this game. And he's like, all right. So they go in and they do the game, and he does something a little bit different. He's like, I think this is the only way we can win is if we, use our attack on the ship, blow up the ship. That's going to get rid of the swarm. Use that time to, use the time that we have after we blow up that one little swarm to build up our next attack against the ship, use the other ships as a kind of like a barrier around us, which we learned from from our games inside of that little flightless area, to act as a shield around us to protect us, because our shields aren't going to last that long once the big swarm comes in, and then annihilate the planet. And once we annihilate the planet, because they're kind of like ants, like once the queen dies, it's all dead. Like they all die. And that's kind of like what one of the characters who was considered to be the hero of the first war tells them. And so he does that, and he goes like, yes. And they go and they look at the game, and they're like, they say, hey, we won the game. And, like you can see like some commotion going on in the upper levels. And then they turn the screens back on. He's like, well, why are you still simulating the game? And they're like, that wasn't a simulation. Like you actually won the war.
No, that was the whole point of the book.
Yeah. And so like now was like the moral dilemma comes in. I think that they were trying to focus on just that scenario of it, because I think if they delved into other parts of the book, especially Orson Card's kind of political views, it was probably going to get a lot more pushback.
So here's how the payoff to the moral dilemma in the book goes.
Okay.
All those generals and people in the top who were plotting, all of them went on trial and all of them went to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Ender was given a high military rank and promotion, but he was never allowed to come back to Earth. So Ender joined his sister in leading some of the first waves of human colony. And it's about how frontier and expansion and imperialism always has a horrible blood crime. And what in the later books plays out is it's all about how that horrible crime impacts how those people are going forward and that civilization going forward.
Yeah, so I don't know.
They actually made it dumber than the book by peeling it down too much.
Yeah. But then I don't think they could have gone. They couldn't have made the movie longer, and they couldn't make another movie because they know a boycott was going to come.
Yeah, this
and the boycott came.
Yeah, this wasn't really a good, solid movie, and also Orson had been really into no gay marriage at the time. That was another problem.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
but I do think it's a fun movie. It's
a fun movie.
Yeah.
And obviously, you can't have his brother and sister taking over the government with social media. That was dumb. And his brother, who is the psychopath, who is too much of a psychopath to lead the military, ends up becoming president of Earth.
As they do.
As they do. But he becomes president of Earth and actually is compassionate as a leader of president of Earth, even though he's a psychopath.
I enjoyed this movie. I'm going to go through the book and maybe I'll enjoy it less.
Yeah.
But because I do enjoy V for Vendetta. I do enjoy V for Vendetta, and that comic ruined the movie for me. So maybe the book will ruin the movie for me too. So we'll see. So
now what you've all been waiting for,
the piece de
Tiger King. Tiger King, which is something special. It is something very special.
I did not expect this to be this good. Even while you were explaining to me, and I was going like, this sounds amazing. I was like, this is going to be like a neat little thing. I may not even get through it because my attention for a lot of these kind of docu-series usually kind of falls off after episode 3. Nope. I binged the shit out of this hard as fuck. I watched the shit out of it.
Yeah.
And even parts of it, I was like, I need to go back and see that again.
So what I'm going to say is this is really good as a documentary because you can't be perfectly neutral in a documentary.
No, they try.
But what this movie is it represents everybody in an honest way within the thesis of the movie, of the documentary series. And the thesis of the documentary series is, we really shouldn't be having these big cats in zoos or in like roadside attractions or even conservation parks. They should be, in their natural habitat.
Yeah.
Having them all here is a problem.
I don't know if I agree with that position either. I think what they were doing was terrible.
No, that's a thesis a thesis statement in the movie that the campaign manager for Joe Exotic says.
Yeah.
And it points out that even the conservationists and the hucksters, both in this little niche world, they're all kind of exploiting. None of them are really good people. And the whole process ends up giving them lots of money and power, and that ultimately becomes corrupting and destroying their humanity. Because that was the part at the end where they showed Joe Exotic when he first started saying, listen, I have this park because, it's terrible, these people just taking these big cats and doing this and that and the other thing and breeding them, and it's all wrong. And, he ends up becoming the polar opposite person. And his nemesis, Carol Baskin, starts off on the other moral pole, and she does a complete 180. But again, neither of them are good people.
Nope.
So what part do you want to dive into first about this?
We should get into the very beginning. Like, first of all, he was so this whole kind of thing with the cat people is that the cat people have this kind of scam going where they breed cats. They breed big cats, tigers, ligers, and lions, mostly, and get them when they're little tiny little baby little kittens, and they're so cute and cuddly, and and then have people come out and fly out to their little ranch, pay big money to take pictures with those those cute little fuzzy little furry little animals, and then once they get to about, I think, age 18 months,
18 months,
they're completely fucking money. They're worthless. And people don't want to see the big cats anymore unless it's just like, from afar, and they go like, oh, look at them playing or whatever. Or look at this idiot playing in the cage with them. Other than that, they're pretty much worthless. The big money comes from the cubs. And the problem is that, like, you're looking at 18 months to 20 years. I think they're alive for.
Yeah, 22 years.
Yeah, what you're going to end up having is a bunch of adult cats.
And they got like 10 years, maybe at most, of a breeding lifespan.
Yeah. So you only have like a very small window of opportunity of collecting money from this. So you're constantly having to breed the cats over and over again. You're going to end up having too many cats. And a lot of these cats either get pawned off to some schlub who has to take these in, some government agent or shack. To some crazy lunatic who's going to do bad things with them too, or take them out and euthanize them.
Or sometimes just having shoot them.
Yeah, well, yeah, euthanize them. That's a nice way of saying that. Just take them out back and shoot them and bury the body somewhere and go, what cat?
Yeah.
I don't remember that cat. What about all these pictures of this cat? Well, we took care of the cat. We gave it another home. Yeah. Where's the home?
Yeah.
Don't worry your pretty little head about that.
Or we euthanized in an appropriate veterinary way. Okay, Do you have the records of the drugs? Oh no, those got burned up in the barn.
Yep.
So one of the things I liked about this is this has both a Tampa and a Las Vegas connection.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about the Vegas scumbag in the series?
So the Vegas scumbag, someone posted a picture somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but it was like gas station erection pills personified. That's what he looks like.
Yeah,
I think that's perfect. I don't think I've ever seen anything more perfect than that in all my life. That's how you would imagine, like, the type of people that buy those things. His whole shtick is like he gets these little baby cubs. He takes them out to Las Vegas. He sneaks them into the hotels. Then he goes out clubbing and he goes like, "Hey, I got a baby tiger in my room. Look at this baby tiger. Like, want to come up to my room and pet it? Oh, I have something else for you to pet." Ooh, woo.
There's also probably some ecstasy involved at some point in that process.
Of course, and that's pretty much the scam that he was pulling. And he also pulled off some other scams too, which ended up leading to the theft of the zoo of Joe Exotic.
It wasn't really a theft. It was a complicated scam that they were both running.
Mm-hmm.
And that one guy said, "Well, wait, I technically legally own everything because of this scam, so I'm just gonna put my foot down."
Yeah, because he would bounce around ownership from person to person, and he just happened to give it to the wrong guy who was like, "Stupid, this is my park now."
Yeah. A guy who just happened to bring in a drifter is a charitable word for the guy who was the later hitman in the hitman scenario for Joe Exotic.
Which
And
everybody who was involved with Joe Exotic was a drifter.
yeah, but this one is like a violent, disturbed drifter.
Yeah.
Because he was coming down during part of the filming off of some sort of drug. I mean, he was the only person who was coming down off of drugs during the filming of the documentary, but he was on something kind of intense.
Yeah.
Also, they brought
methamphetamine.
in. Yeah. Meth was definitely a factor throughout this whole.
Yeah. So different parks, like different one of these kind of groups have like a different way of attracting people to get free labor out of them or cheap labor out of them. Joe Exotic was, hey, if you would just happen to see someone sitting outside of a bus stop for more than 24 hours, let me know. Then he would go and pick them up and say, hey, what's going on, man? I got no place to live. I got stuck. You're sent out here. Oh, great. You know, like, here's what I'll do. I'll pay you $100 a week if you come work for my farm, and you can have all the free food that you can pick out of the trash. And, you know, all you have to do is tame some lions. And, you know, who doesn't want to tame some fucking lions? They're like, fuck yeah. The guy in, where was that guy at? Was it
South Carolina?
South Carolina.
The guy with the sex cult?
Yeah, sex cult. He would be like, hey, little girl, I see you're 16, 17? That's the legal age. Why don't you, leave your house, come work for me, and you can work with all these beautiful little kittens, and I'll buy you boobies.
Well, no. He doesn't buy him boobies right away.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you've had sex with him a few times before you do that.
Yeah. You buy him boobies. Even if they want the boobies or not, you just go, hey, we're getting you boobies. Do I have a say in this? Well, you just want, who's going to turn down free boobies?
Also, you know, we're selling sex appeal here. Mm-hmm. Tigers are sex appeal. You're sex appeal, but you're not as sex appeal as you could be. That's why you're getting the free boobies.
Yeah.
And also, you're basically, you know, slave labor for me, working 16-hour days and working with me for a good hour or two of those.
Yeah. And, you know, you can leave. It's not like one of those cults where I'll shoot you if you leave, but you just have nowhere to go because, you know, I made sure that all your relationships were destroyed while you were coming here. So,
yeah. And like the what I love about the documentary is he's presented as like, hey, this guy seems reasonable.
Yeah, like that's how everybody does. Everybody gets introduced as someone completely reasonable, and then you start to realize, oh, there's a problem.
Wait a minute. Wait.
There's a big problem here. Like you meet Carol, and you're like, oh, she seems like a very intelligent person. She seems like she's got a valid axe to grind against a lot of these people. She seems like the good guy. Wait, you did what now? Wait, let me see those cages again. Oh no.
Yeah.
Wait, how do you get who helps take? Oh, you just have free labor through volunteers. Oh,
and your foundation makes millions of dollars every year.
Oh.
So yeah, everybody here is exploiting everybody.
Yeah.
It's really kind of horrible. And the most relatable guy was the guy who may or may not have been the basis for Tony Montana.
Yeah, he's the only guy that actually pays his employees. He's the only guy who actually cares about the animals once they get older. He's not there to breed them and show off them and make money off of them. Like, no, it's his own private zoo for him and his friends, and that's it. And he just likes having the animals around because he genuinely has an affinity for these animals, where all the other people may have started out that way, but they don't now.
Yeah, it's all about the money and the power. And for Joe Exotic, there are lots of terrible things about Joe Exotic. The worst has to be he gay married two guys who weren't gay when they met Joe, but they were gay for meth.
Mm-hmm. And it drove one to suicide.
Yeah, that is perhaps the most evil thing that was shown on the documentary. Now, some of the people associated with Joe Exotic said that there were things that never made it to the documentary that were pretty evil, but the more I think about it, no, convincing someone they're gay by drugging them with methamphetamines, that's pretty evil, and you're doing it to the whole point that they kill themselves.
Yeah.
That is perhaps absolutely irreparably evil.
Yeah. But I think like when it comes to like people saying like, oh, there was more evil stuff that we told them about that they didn't put in, I think a lot of that stuff is like, well, we have to be careful what we can and can't prove. So every time we say something, we have to make sure that like there's some establishment, or at least these accusations are credible or something like that. So like the whole Carol thing,
you noticed that Doc Antle was saying, in my opinion, I believe. He was very, very judicious in how he said his words.
Yeah. Oh, so we failed to mention that Joe Exotic is also a country singer.
He's not. No, he's not. He lip syncs. Those songs are written and recorded by someone else.
I was going to say his voice didn't sound right, but whatever.
No. You just thought it could have been auto-tune. Yeah, and Joe Exotic had an internet show that we've actually had more viewers than his internet show has, and I've been on internet shows that have had more viewers, and I don't know why nobody wants to watch a show where a man sodomizes a blow-up doll named after one of his enemies and then threatens it with a gun later. I don't understand why somebody would want to watch that. Would you, Jim?
Bruh. I forgot I had my soundboard.
Or saying, hey, one of these days I'm going to put her head in a jar. Again, I don't know why he ended up being in jail for allegedly hiring a hitman to murder her.
Yeah.
And a jury of 12 people said, yeah, he probably did that.
Or when he was like, in 2070, we're not going to have Big Cat Rescue or the federal government anymore. Yeah.
Because we're just going to kill him.
Sorry, go on.
So Jim, as somebody who's been involved in libertarian politics, what was your opinion about Joe Exotic's libertarian campaigns?
So everybody goes like, man, that's crazy. Like he ran for president and he's a nutty guy. And it's like I hung out with a guy who was a vice presidential candidate. He was a redneck Muslim, and he was the vice presidential pick for a guy who lived in his trailer.
I mean, what do you think about the nuts and bolts?
Don't get me wrong, they're good guys. I liked both of them. Daryl Perry is a cool guy. Will Coley is a cool guy. But it gets weird in the little P. And now we got a guy who's running who wants to give everybody a free pony and walks around with a giant toothbrush and a boot on his head.
Yeah.
And tried to turn Randall Terry gay by throwing glitter at him. Like this is a thing that is happening right now. So
yeah. So wait, are
Joe
you saying
Exotic fits right in?
Yeah. So you're saying Bourbon Extreme might actually win the nomination this time?
No, he's not going to win. There's no shot. He has no shot.
I would have volunteered if he won.
Yeah. Looks like Jason Hornberger is gonna get it.
Oh
no, that's a good thing. Jason Hornberger is a really cool guy.
Yeah, but that's not going to be really interesting or have a chance of actually being a good protest vote.
No, he's like Gary Johnson if Gary Johnson had a spine and a brain,
and wasn't smoking as much weed.
Right.
The weed was a factor. So let's get back to Joe Exotic's campaign manager, who was the manager of the ammo section at Walmart.
I have several questions.
I mean, the thing is, in libertarian campaigns, that's not unusual or unheard of.
No.
And he seemed like a reasonable person for a Libertarian Party campaign manager guy. He was normal. He was reasonable. He got Joe to stop being as crazy. But Joe was having a little oopsie-doopsie because Joe was trying to avoid various legal penalties by, shifting corporations around. He kind of sort of embezzled from his zoo to fund his two political campaigns. That was sort of what started everything snowballing on him. Let's see.
We should talk about Carol.
Oh, yeah. So anybody from Tampa, when they heard her say, I was in my 20s, I left my husband's house, and I started walking on Nebraska Avenue, that immediately sets off a light bulb in your head. So for those of you who are not from Tampa, Florida, and don't know, That's where you go to get the hookers. Not the good hookers, but not the really bad hookers. The $2 store hookers, not your dollar store hookers. And her husband picked her up in a truck there, got her in a car, and told her, hey, you can hold my gun on me if it makes you feel more safe. So he was going out there looking for a hooker. That's a little bit of subtext that the documentary doesn't fill into that part of Carol's story. And she ran away from her first husband, who many people are claiming is actually now her current husband. If that's true, that makes things even weirder. And she started breeding big cats. She started off on the wrong moral axis right away.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted people to make tigers the same as your house cat. And her husband saw there was a stupid amount of money to be made involved. And he was into doing lots of shady business deals. His business operations, based on what the documentary sounded shady. He went to do a business deal and he never came back. So we already know the cocaine people are involved in this. So there's a lot of smuggling going on, and smuggling is a small niche community. So reasonably thinking, he was probably trying to smuggle some animals or get people involved in smuggling some animals, and they probably didn't like him and they probably killed him. That's my opinion of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
That seems the most reasonable conclusion. Carol probably knew about that. Carol probably knew that she was going to get written out of his will, so she probably got a sketchy version of the will that left an inclusion of what to happen in case you disappear. Although that could have even been legitimate in the will at the time, like saying, look, I'm going to be doing this deal down in Colombia. It's going to be kind of sketchy, so if I don't come back for 5 to 7 years, you can declare me legally dead. But Carol's now become a big part of high society. Like, class and social structure is a major subtext in this whole thing. She can't admit to that. She's like the cream of the crop of people in Florida. She's got 2 million followers on social media who are all dumping money into her. She can't admit to any of that. She can't admit that that's who she was. She can't be honest about that. So she's telling very structured, very thought out lies that are all legally true and could all stand up in a court of law. And that's why that's what I think is the most logical thing to happen. And then she says, look, if you're going to kill somebody with a tiger, I mean, if I was going to do it, I would dip them in sardine oil. Bruh. That O.J. Simpson tried to do a book like that. It didn't work out for him. Even O.J.'s like, oh no, she totally killed that husband. And the guy who was doing the reality show that was filming while there was a documentary filming of Joe Exotic said that he wasn't there when the tiger tried to eat Joe. And he said, based on the people who were there at the time, none of them liked Joe, so that's why nobody came in to help him. They were all hoping that, maybe the tigers will sort it out. Nature will follow its own course. But, Joe, because he was doing methamphetamines, became a little paranoid. He was probably paranoid to start off with, but, smoking meth to have multiple guys be part of your gay harem, that probably makes you more paranoid. What do you think about the whole complex snitching arrangement where the Vegas con artist got a local scumbag nudie bar owner to set up a deal with the FBI so that he could be insulated from any blowback from the FBI while his henchman gets the whole deal laid on him and saying, like, dude, you should totally take this deal, while he's required to cooperate with the police because of his getting in trouble in Vegas with the tiger. What do you think about this complex criminal enterprise?
I don't think he's going to get away with it. I think after all this stuff is now public, I think all those cases are just going to start getting reopened and re-examined, going,
Well, I mean, the strip club owner said, "I'm going to snitch on some other people" at like the end of the documentary. And then he got on this epic jet skiing thing, which was probably in some lake in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma.
Yep. Yeah, I think they're all going to go down after this, Carol included. I think they're probably gonna pass some law saying like, yeah, we're gonna go after all these people, but you're no different. The only difference is that she isn't breeding the cats.
Yeah. So the Carol's big thing right now is she's getting lots of death threats.
Right now,
lots and lots of death threats. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because a documentary said, look, we're not saying she killed her husband. But we're saying it's very suspicious the terms of her husband's disappearance, and this crazy redneck from Oklahoma would do hours upon hours, including an entire diss album talking about how she killed her husband.
You mean,
This is CNN breaking news.
Carol killed her husband.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Okay.
Stuff like that. So, do you think
I should have said now to our correspondent Richard B. Spencer.
Yeah. So, do you think that Joe Exotic had the mental faculties to realize, sodomizing this blow-up doll and saying it's Carol on the internet might blow back and come against me if something horrible happens?
Methamphetamine's a hell of a drug.
You know something else that, as I was talking about, there's all this stuff in. Somebody gets their arm mauled off and it's ripped off by a tiger. That's like 5 to 10 minutes of the documentary, probably at most, maybe 20.
Mm-hmm. But the impact of it they explored for a while.
Well, yeah, because Joe thought this was going to financially ruin him because, a tiger mauled off somebody's arm. That's going to be an insurance problem at the very least. If you have insurance, he probably didn't have insurance.
No,
though.
probably not.
Probably not. He probably told people he had insurance though, and made them sign a legal waiver that says you realize I don't have insurance, even though I told you I totally have insurance, and this is totally just legal boilerplate language to let you know I don't have insurance, but I really totally do. What do you think about the zoo manager who was like, "You think the tiger's not off my legs? No, it was a zipline accident." I mean, that guy was interesting, and he after he got over working for Joe Exotic, he started racing mud drag racers. That guy probably has an interesting story. Like every character in this documentary, you could do a whole documentary just on that one person.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do a whole episode about him, like a little side quest about him. That would have been fun.
Yeah. And then there was the guy who looked like Tom Petty if Tom Petty did a lot of heroin and methamphetamines, who was one of the other people during the progress of this documentary series who was coming off of something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what, but he was clearly coming off of something during part of the documentary. And, they talk about how Joe got people off the street who are addicted and gave them power over, big animals, and they just transferred their addiction. And he probably didn't have the mental wherewithal to realize he was doing that. And that's part of the tragedy of all of this. That there's certain things that are tragic because he lacked self-awareness. I mean, you look at his hair and the style of clothes he wears, he lacked any self-awareness. But most of the things he did weren't evil. But there's like a sequence where he's on the run from the law, and he's like parting out his animals, and he takes his 2 chimpanzees and he takes them to an animal habitat that's actually appropriate for them. And he's like going, I kept these chimpanzees for years, living side by side in each other in cages, and now they get to live out in a habitat and be friends, and they're happy. And I'm like going, was I harming them all of these years? Yeah, you were. So that's the moment where you see Joe as an evil person, because he knew the cameras were on him when he was saying that. He knew he was on the run from the law. He probably knew the law was going to catch up to him. So he was filming that to make himself more of a sympathetic character. But his way to make himself more sympathetic was, I'm actually kind of evil. So they're putting together a special episode with some extra footage. I don't know if it's been posted to Netflix or the public library yet. We may come back around to this to review that final episode of Tiger King. So yeah, Tiger King's taken off because this is the perfect piece of media for everybody being locked down and feeling a little crazy. Because, if you're going insane from being locked in your house, you could say, well, at least I'm not Joe Exotic. You could say, I'm not Doc Antle. Well, I mean, I'd kind of like to be Doc Antle, even though it's kind of scummy having a sex cult. But I mean, look at some of those women he's got there. I mean, right? These people are all not right, but you at least feel like I'm more right in my situation where I am now.
Yeah.
And Carol's big reason for cooperating with this is she thought that this would be the big thing to galvanize the public against these sort of big cat parks.
Well, they did. It did.
But not really. They were already on the way out.
Yeah. But I think this did kind of clean up what was left, right?
Well, no, there's still quite a few that are still open. And the guy, the drug dealer
but
guy,
I mean,
down
like in terms of like swaying public opinion, I think this is enough to do it. I mean, right now we're looking at what? So 34 million people watched this over the first 10 days of release. This is at least according to Nielsen. So Nielsen's probably not going to give they're not going to count all the people who went to the public library. Right?
Enough people watch this that a reporter asked Donald Trump about it.
Okay. And it's also one of the most successful releases to date. It's also been suggested that its viewership was aided by the delicious Negro Modelo party that America has been having, which caused global viewers to be restricted to their homes while drinking delicious Negro Modelo and watching Tiger King, according to Wikipedia.
And they're also talking about doing a live-action movie of the life of Joe Exotic.
They're going to Dogtown it?
They're thinking about Dogtown. And like David Spade has been suggested, and David Spade like, I don't know, man.
Why not? You already played Joe Dirt. This is Joe Dirt's basically Joe Exotic, but gay. That's
kind of why David Spade's like, I don't know, man.
This would be right up his alley. So I'm looking at Wikipedia. So it says, aside from the celebrities saying, they either denounce what they did or saying or denied having anything to do with these people, Carol Baskin said her and her husband felt betrayed by the filmmaker, stating that she was told during discussion of Exotic and Baskin's missing husband were just for context.
It was just for context.
Yeah, that's an important context. Because they constantly throughout the film accuse her of murdering her husband, and it looks as though there's quite enough evidence to make a valid observation of accusatory claims from other people, not us. Just want to be clear, not us. Yeah. We're not accusing them, but given what other people have accused them, it seems credible at best.
In our opinion, there are a lot of suspicious details around Carol.
Yeah.
And her second husband's death. And while the police haven't had enough to make a conclusive investigation out of it, there's a lot of credible details that should be looked into.
Yeah. In a post on the Big Cat Rescue website, Baskin stated that the show has a, quote, segment in the third episode devoted to suggesting with lies and innuendos from people who are not credible that I had a role in the disappearance of my husband, Dawn, 21 years ago, and that the series presents without any regard for the truth. Baskin has never been charged with anything related to Lewis's disappearance and has always denied anything to do with it.
Wait, there was also a sequence where she said, my little brother was 9. I didn't really know him or have a relationship with him. That's a very weird thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a police officer. And the way the police were at that point in time, we had kind of moved to the police having more of a corporate mentality. Mm-hmm. If there was family there, things would get kind of pushed under the rug. So that wasn't an illegitimate claim. And in the documentary, never said she killed her husband. They just said, That's the central burning thing that was burning through Joe Exotic's mind in his feud with Carol Baskin. Like, she says, I'm a horrible human being. Well, she murdered her husband. Meanwhile, the documentary shows Joe Exotic basically murdering his husband by getting him addicted to meth and having him have lots of gay sex that he doesn't like.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I think the climax of the film, the whole thing that this is getting to, is that he no, I guess not allegedly. He's been convicted. He was trying to hire an assassin to murder Carol because of the financial damage that she was causing upon his farm, or a zoo rather.
But he hired the assassin because he was coaxed into doing it by 2 federal informants.
However, there were lots of people who knew him personally that were like, oh, Joe Exotic was offering people to pay. Was it Tuesday?
Yeah.
This is something that he always did around us, and we never really knew how serious he was, but we wouldn't doubt that he was completely serious. If we were pretty sure that if we said yes, he would probably give us money.
So basically, 2 federal informants put a patsy in front of Joe who would take money to go do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Though they couldn't prove he actually did the thing, they did prove Joe gave him money, which is all you need to do to convict somebody of a federal murder for hire scheme.
Yeah. $3,000. Which, sure, it's not a lot of money to have someone murdered. Like, you'd imagine it would be a little bit higher than that. But in the world that he existed in, $3,000 is quite a bit of money to a meth head.
$3,000 is a tiger and a half.
Is it? Is it really that cheap to get a
tiger?
tiger?
They were selling tiger cubs for $2,500 a pop.
Oh.
So that wasn't even a lot of money for Joe.
Yeah, okay. But in the meth world, $3,000 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money to a meth head.
And when the first assassin failed, they brought in a federal agent undercover to try to get him to do it again. He doesn't make the payment a second time. Because clearly, when one guy brings somebody to you to do a job, to kill somebody, they don't do it successfully, and he comes back with another hitman, even a methed out Okie redneck realized, wait a minute, this is suspicious. This is clearly suspicious.
Yep.
My problem with the whole murder scheme comes down to the fact that he ran his mouth. He did a lot of things that were inappropriately threatening towards Carol Baskin. And everybody around him knew he really hated that woman, so he said those things. And there were people who didn't have his best interests at heart, or even his neutral interests at heart. People who had his worst interests at heart because they could benefit from it. And they were also benefiting from not going to jail. And so they both talked him into it, and then said, hey, give this guy some money and he'll go do it. And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll go do it. And then he ran off and did $3,000 worth of meth. That's my interpretation of his narrative of what happened, is he doesn't remember where he went. I imagine he did a meth bender when he got somewhere. And like, yeah, I think it was in Florida. That, combined with, embezzlement and various other minor federal crimes that they didn't have any interest to go for him, the U.S. attorneys had a nice case. And then Joe decided to ally with PETA, who had spent time trying to destroy him, and he was ratting everybody out to PETA, except for Doc Antle. Which is another interesting thing about that is everybody was afraid of pissing off Doc Antle. So Tiger King is great. I love Tiger King. And if they make a movie of Joe Exotic's life, I would love to watch that. I would love to watch a live action series of Joe Exotic's life. I mean, there's so many other interesting details of this documentary series that we didn't even get into. Like, he hired a guy to be a reality show producer who used to work for Bill O'Reilly at Inside Edition, but had to quit because he got addicted to crack.
As you do.
And he thought that this was his path to redemption and his getting back into the big time by selling this clearly $1 million reality show idea to a production company.
Oops. That didn't work out because the barn magically burned down.
Magically burned down when federal law enforcement was about to come looking for detailed information about Joe Exotic.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird. Kind of weird that it burned down exactly at that point in time. Also kind of weird that Joe Exotic had duplicates of a lot of incriminating information that he kept off-site. Also makes you go, Because if Joe really didn't want to get in trouble with the feds, he should have just opened with that. Saying, listen, I'm going to rat out everybody, but I can't do jail time. So watch Tiger King, everybody.
Yeah.
It's a great documentary.
It's fantastic. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. It's going to go down into the annals of American pop culture for years to come. There are going to be references to it for decades.
Yeah. Well, because everybody was forced to watch it.
Well, I mean, we weren't forced to watch it, but you couldn't not watch it.
It was almost like Coupon the movie.
Yeah. You watched one episode and then you just had to watch the second one. And then a third one.
Wait. Hold on. You said what? Hold on. I have to watch the next episode now. You can't leave me laying in like this.
And that's something I will say also about the documentary. It was so great of how they ended and how they started things. They knew exactly how to suck you in at every point.
Mm-hmm.
It was really well done. So I'm sure whatever awards for best documentary series, this will probably pick up some awards.
Yep. Well, there's not a lot of competition coming out this year, so.
Yeah.
What are they up against? Trolls World Tour?
So that's our show, and hopefully we won't have any more koofing or any more technical difficulties or anything like that to delay us, because that threw us off, and that was why we had a late moment at the beginning of the stream.
And last week we didn't do a show because I got sick, not with COVID. At least not that I may have had COVID too, but I had a really bad sinus infection that resulted in my whole face swelling up.
Yeah, there was actually a news story that said that phlebotomists testing people for antibodies for Delicious Negro Modelo show that 80% of the people they tested, and they're just doing mass testing now in Washington State, people who said, no, I've never had any symptoms, 80% of them had antibodies for it.
Yeah.
So that is our show.
Yep.
We're gonna have to figure out. And we're gonna have to figure out what compelling thing we're gonna pull together for watching for next week.
Oh, I'm pretty sure we can find stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm gonna go do some talks. Well, we're gonna have 3 movies to review. For next week.
All right. So, good night, everybody.
Worms.